Today I thought I would do something a bit different, a change of pace if you like. Welcome to the office. I'm going to do an editing video, which I haven't done for a very long time, a bit of post-processing. I thought what I would do is talk you through these two images from my last video. I really like them, but I know they're not to everybody's taste. But nevertheless, they're very easy to shoot and they're very easy to process. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about both of those aspects, including, of course, showing you the editing process in Lightroom. I hope you'll enjoy the video. If you do and you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe before you go. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. Welcome to my little sort of editing area that I've got, which is going to form part of my larger office when I get around to doing some work on it in the next few months. The lighting actually isn't great in here, so I apologise if we get any weird colours when you're looking at my face. Hopefully I might be able to correct that a little bit, but as I said, the lighting needs some work, one of the elements. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about how I created these two images in my last shoot. They're kind of a fine arty style, minimalist look, and I really like them. They're very easy to shoot. These didn't require the use of a tripod or filters. I didn't need a lot of dynamic range. I didn't need sophisticated autofocus. It was a simple handheld shot. Yes, I used a telephoto lens, but if you could have got closer to the subject, you could do it with a different kind of lens, with an ordinary focal length lens. And it was all really just about getting the framing right, getting the subject matter, in this case these grasses or reeds, nicely isolated from the rest of the scene, so that I could then make use of that in the editing that I'm going to show you in Lightroom. So very, very easy to shoot, and the Lightroom editing process is also very, very easy. Now, if you're not using Lightroom, I'm sure that other software has exactly the same kind of functionality, so it's not going to make a huge difference. You might just have to look in a different place for the various controls that I'm using. Anyway, enough waffling about that. Let's go into Lightroom and I'll show you how I processed both of these images. One a little bit more complicated than the other, but not hard by any means. Okay, so this is my first image. And this one, as you can see, if you look at the histogram, I actually underexposed this quite a lot. That's not too much of a problem for this. I'm going to be able to recover any details that I want and indeed blow the highlights that I want quite easily. Looking at this compositionally, I got it pretty right. Down in the bottom center of the frame here, one of the reflections comes down a bit further than I ideally would have wanted, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. And up at the top here, there's some shadows coming in, which again are not ideal, but are going to be pretty easy to deal with. So my starting point on this is actually going to be to do the crop, and I always envisage this as a one-to-one crop, so I'm going to crop it in like that. And because I kind of want everything sitting, roughly centrally, that looks about right to me. So that's the crop done. And then I'm going to convert it to black and white. Now what we've got here is obviously quite a dark image, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just bringing the whites up, because I actually kind of want to blow out a lot of the whites, a lot of the highlights in this anyway. So I'm just going to drag the whites up. Now if I hold down the Option key, that'd be an Alt key on the PC, I can actually see when it's blowing the whites out. And if I look there, that's blowing out all the whites on the top of the screen, but not on the bottom. And that's because the bottom of the screen is a lot darker. And now you can see that because all the grasses or reeds or whatever in the top half of the screen have gone kind of grey, whereas the stuff in the bottom is almost black. So I'm going to fix that with a linear gradient. So I go into my Mask Tools, into Linear Gradient, and I'm going to drag a gradient sort of halfway up the screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the whites up in that section, but I'm also going to bring the blacks up, which is going to take some of the darkness out of there, probably not that much, because then I'm going to bring the shadows up in the bottom. Yeah, let's bring the whites up, the blacks up all the way. Maybe even bring the exposure up a little bit. And that's balanced it all a lot nicer. Now what I've still got here, down on the bottom centre, I can still see the vague traces of that reflection I didn't like. And up the top here I can still see those shadows coming in that I didn't like. So I'm actually going to use the post-crop vignette tool, which is somewhere down here, effects, post-crop vignette. Now most of the time when you use a post-crop vignette you end up darkening the corners, which I don't want to do. I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to brighten the corners, so I'm going to drag it across to the right, and that's going to blow out the corners and turn them white. And what that's left me with is still a little bit up in the top center there of shadow coming in, and maybe just a little bit too much shadow and ripples being visible in the scene in the middle on the left hand side. So what I'm going to do now is go back into the mask tools, create a new mask, create a brush, and have the flow at about 50%, and I'm just going to bring probably shadows, blacks and whites up a little bit. Make sure it's not auto masking, because that's not going to do anything. Make the brush a little bit bigger, and then just going to brush that in so it takes out most of that effect. And then again down here on these sort of extra ripples here, because we were going for a very minimalist feel on this one, I might need to do that top one a bit more. So I'm going to create a new mask again with a brush, again bring the blacks and the shadows up and just brush that in. The whites a bit as well. And then there's one tiny little kind of bit up there that doesn't want to disappear, that just doesn't look right to me. So spot alien brush, drag that across. Job done. Now I really liked this image, but I shot a second one which had all of these ripples in, and I actually even really quite like it as an image in colour, and it could have worked as a colour, but I wanted to do it as a black and white, and so that's what I did. Interestingly, I've also just captured up there's a a dragonfly flying into the scene, which unfortunately doesn't do anything for the image, so that'll have to go. Okay, so on this one, same basic process, made it a 1:1 crop. Now when I first did this, I actually shifted the crop over to center these a bit more, but in the end I decided to put it back to there, because just fractionally off center, for me anyway, with the way the patterns of the ripples are working, just felt stronger. Other people may disagree, but that's the crop I went for. Again, black and white. And again, I'm going to bring the whites up. And because I didn't underexpose this one so much, I haven't got quite so much to do here. So bring the whites all the way up. And again, that's given me that very high key effect. And I could even bring the shadows up a bit. Now, what I'm seeing here is I've got not enough contrast, not enough differentiation between the leaves on the grass and the background, so I'm going to need to darken those down a little bit. Now I could just try pulling the blacks down, and that helps a bit, but I think I might need to be more selective, because what I'm noticing is, again, the reflected part of the bottom looks a lot darker. So let's do another linear gradient in there, and I'm just going to bring the blacks up in that just to kind of level things out a bit. But then what I want to do is just make these all stand out a bit more at the top. So I'm actually going to use one of the sort of the newer tools in Lightroom, which is Select Subject. If I click on that, you can see what that's done is it's selected the grasses. Now it hasn't done a fantastic job because there's kind of bits in between the grasses and around the grasses that it hasn't that it's selected when I didn't want it to. But you know, to be honest, I'm not going to be doing significant changes here, so I could probably get away with it. But I can actually, if I click on subtract and use the brush to subtract, I can take out, let's put the flow all the way up, I can take out the bits that I don't want it to affect, at least broadly anyway. As I said, because I'm not going to be doing huge changes to this, just the odd bit isn't going to matter. So I don't have to be massively precise with this. Okay, and then what I'm going to do with the bit I've got selected, I'm just going to pull that down, make it darker by pulling the blacks down. What I'm seeing there is a couple of bits are getting much darker than others, so down here and up here. Simple thing to do. I'll go back to my subtract again with a brush, but this time bring the flow down and just reduce the amount of effect just in those areas. And the same there, and the same kind of there. And now, looking at this, the one on the left looks a lot brighter than the one on the right. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to duplicate the mask. Now obviously that's having much stronger effect on here than I want. So I'm going to then intersect that mask with a brush. So now what's going to happen, if I turn the mask on, you can see it's affecting all the same areas. Then if I start brushing in, all it's going to affect is the bits where the mask exists and where I've brushed it in. So if I start brushing here, you can see immediately it stopped affecting this bit. Let's turn the mask off so that we can see the effect. Turn the flow up. And that's just subtly darkening that bit there. And the final two things I'm going to do, I'm going to use my post-crop vignette again, just to sort of brighten the edges slightly so it kind of fades out a bit towards the edges. And then I'm going to use the spot healing brush and just take out this dragonfly. It's a shame, but it doesn't really add anything to the image, so I've just taken it out. I think that's pretty close to the image that I ended up with. I might have played around with it a bit more. I've got a feeling what I might have done in the end is just pulled the overall blacks back a little bit. But generally speaking, a little bit of finessing. And that's how the image was created. Okay, so that's it. That's how I edited these two images. I like the effect and I like these images. In fact, one of them has made it into my black and white portfolio. That's how much I actually like them. I hope you've enjoyed this video watching how I did this, and if you have, well, likes, shares and comments are always appreciated. If you're new here and you want to see more of my stuff, whether it's in the field stuff or the occasional post-processing video, then don't forget to hit subscribe before you go. The next video will hopefully be out in the field if all goes well. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching this one. Bye.